This is When I Grow Up with Paul Glazby.
Matthew, welcome.
Thank you, Paul.
This is When I Grow Up. I'm Paul Glazby, and this is the very first episode of the new podcast, which all came about because whenever I tell people about my sort of journey of how I got to where I am, like I kind of take it for granted because it's just what I did, but then people always were like, well, it's so random, you know, such an unusual path, which I guess it is, but kind of more importantly, everything that I've ever done, whether it's the DJing or the fitness and now real estate, like I never meant to do any of it. It just sort of happened by accident. And then there's some people that I know that are kind of in just jobs that they don't enjoy, you know, like things that like careers that they're in just because it's secure and, you know, but I just don't understand that. And I just thought if we, you know, can put something out there that might inspire somebody to just make a change or try something or, you know, that's really the idea of what this is going to be.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. We've known each other for a couple of years now.
Yep.
We met in a networking group, which is, you know, we apologise for that, but we did. And I remember the rumour going through the room. There would have been 30 people in the room. And there was one Thursday morning that the rumour went through the room that Glazby was a DJ. And I was like, what are you talking about? And someone pulled up Spotify and there he is, DJ Glaz, you know, rocking it, hard house. And only knowing you for a short amount of time then, it was mind-blowing. But now having gotten to know you over that time and we've obviously exchanged some different stories and, you know, your journey to where you are now is not only interesting, but it is inspiring and it is very different. You know, obviously, you didn't grow up here, you know, as people can tell from your accent.
Really?
Yeah. So it's for me. I thought what we do is, you know, I'm obviously here helping you from a producer perspective, but we're just going to flip the script on episode 1 so that people get an idea about who you are and why they would want to invest the time to hear that story and listen to you talk to other people about their dreams and what they thought when they were 10 years of age, what they wanted to do when they grew up.
Yeah. Well, we do have, some pretty interesting people that I've a lot of the people that I've met throughout my real estate journey. And then some of my old, you know, mates and contacts from the DJ world, I've sort of spoken to them and they're going to be involved as well. So I think there is going to be some pretty interesting stories to come. Positive, I don't know if that's the right word, but like today, when this episode comes out, is 24 years to the day. If we get this right, to the day, but maybe pretty much to the day. 24 years since Vicious Circle Recordings, which is my record label, which is still running today. 24 years since it released. So it's nice that, you know, almost a quarter of a century later, I'm now at the other side of the world doing something completely different. There's a hell of a lot of things have happened between then and now, and hopefully we'll cover a lot of that, you know, throughout the episodes of this podcast.
So we talk about, I think a good place to start, generally, you know, you would ask, you know, what did you want to do when you grew up, right?
Yeah.
But I don't want to start just there because another thing that I've learnt is that one of your aliases, I didn't realise, are you the real Kaiser Soze? Yes,
I am. Interesting story there, actually, because right. Anyone that's not into hard house, that will probably go over the head a little bit. But I did a bootleg of a track called Dreams, real epic, famous track. And I just started producing, and I did this bootleg where I essentially ripped the track off, which in hard house you can sort of get away with a little bit. And so instead of putting my name on it and risking, you know, getting in trouble for it, I used Kaiser Soze. Obviously, we're big film fans, and So the whole who is Kaiser Soze? You've obviously done your research, Matthew. I like it.
Wow.
But then when you do a vinyl, you have to put the God, I can't remember what it's called. But there's like a number,
It's like a serial number.
Like a serial number,
Yeah.
but there's a name for it anyway. And so for the serial number, I put Glaz 001. So obviously people, found out. Anyway, fast forward about 3 years, and I get a call from Virgin Records, which it's a relatively big label. Oh, I just wanted to talk to you. Did you do this Kaiser Soze? And I call it Somnium instead of Dreams. I call it Somnium, which I think is Latin for dreams or something like that. So did you do this Somnium track? And I remember I was in a shopping centre in Sheffield, and I'm thinking, do I say yes or do I say no? Like, am I going to get in trouble?
How much trouble am I in?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, yes? Question mark. And they said, oh, well, we really like it. We want to, we're doing a re-release of Dreams and we want to use it. So I'm like, oh, okay, sweet.
Yeah.
Anyways, it turned out the sort of the production level on it wasn't sort of up to their standards, so they then commissioned me to do another remix. So then I actually went in and did a completely different remix of Dream. So there's two versions of a Dream remix. Like there's my Kaiser Soze one and there's my Paul Glazby one. The Paul Glazby one was actually a lot better, but yeah. So the Kaiser Soze Somnium, I think we pressed 500. Just in a white sleeve with a sticker on it that just said Kaiser Soze Somnium, and but that was. If I'd not done that, I would never have ended up on. And then that record, actually, I was the B side of the. So the A side was I can't remember. It was like some big trance DJ did their version, and it got to number 30 in the UK charts. So much like Andrew Ridgeley having the B side to Careless Whisper and retiring from that. Obviously, I couldn't retire from it, but I can say I got to in the top 30 of the UK charts.
That's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Well, look, as a kid in Sheffield, so you're a real estate agent now.
Yes.
You've owned gyms and run gyms.
Yeah.
You're a world-renowned DJ.
Yep.
An underworld figure.
Yeah.
Kaiser Soze.
Yeah.
But as a young kid growing up on the streets of Sheffield, what did you want to do when you grew up?
Yeah, I don't think I ever knew. That was the problem. It's a lot of the people I've spoken to in preparation for doing this podcast have kind of said the same thing. I think this is one of the things I take exception to is that the whole schooling system and knowing you're supposed to know what you want to what classes you want to do to sort of get to where you want to be in life, and it's just. You don't know. You don't know. You don't. You're your arse from your elbow when you're a kid.
It's a lot to ask of a child effectively they're asking you at 16 to say, what's the rest of your life look like? It's a big ask.
I did work experience at 14.
Yeah.
So it's even earlier than that.
Yeah,
like you don't know. Like at 14 years old, a 14-year-old boy, you've got more things on your mind than what you want to be when you grow up. You've just
absolutely. That's the last thing.
That's the last
thing.
You
don't want to grow up.
Just let me lock myself in my bedroom. I'll be fine. Leave me alone.
Exactly.
But it's just a bizarre concept that you would sort of know what you want to be. I'm sure there's people out there that like, oh, I always wanted to be. That's what I ended up doing.
Definitely.
But it's got to be the exception to the rule, I'm sure. And at 47 next month, and I still don't know where I want to be when I grow up. It's. But I've kind of followed my passions and I never thought DJing would be. I was just a bedroom DJ with aspirations of one day playing in a club. But then I played in a club, and then it was, well, what if I for me to be able to play in a club in a different city was the thing. To play outside of Sheffield.
Sure,
that was the thing that was going to be. I've made it. And then I did that, but then. A few months later, things just kind of progressed. And
so how do you go from a kid in Sheffield in your bedroom, music's a passion, you got some decks set up in the bedroom, how does that progress to travelling the world and people knowing who Paul Glazby is. How does that happen?
Well, I guess one of the things that I had working for me was that I kind of had like a marketing mind. I didn't know, but looking back, you know, I used to, I'd be buying everything that came out. I would make sure I had, you know, like new records, like all the new tracks that came out. I was on top of that all the time. Because when I got into DJing as well, like the reason I got into it, I'm a big Metallica fan and heavy metal, you know, always have been from 12 years old. And then I ended up getting introduced to, we went out one night, because at 15 I started boxing. Did that till I was 19. So my sort of late teens, I was very focused on boxing. And then I stopped doing that at 19 and sort of, we went out on a night out with some mates just to have some beers. And I bumped into a bloke that I used to go to college with. I used to do like a day release thing from work, like an apprenticeship.
Don't be careful, day release.
Yeah.
Sounds like you're one of your other mates.
Yeah, that's right. No. I did 1 day a week at college, and I met this bloke called Guy. And he was a lot older, well, not a lot older, but I was 16, he would have been 28, and he introduced me to some heavy metal bands, and he was just like a really great guy, covered in tattoos, and he was learning to do T-shirt printing, because he used to make bootleg T-shirts and sell them outside the concerts and stuff. But I was doing lithographic printing, so business cards, letterheads and all that. So there was no real need for me to do that course, but the best thing about it was I met him, and we sort of kept in touch, you know, over the, but you know, him being so much older than me, it's not like we were, you know,
you weren't mates.
Yeah, close mates, but he was just a really nice guy.
Yeah.
Called Guy.
Made it easy.
Yeah. And anyway, I bumped into him a few times over the years, and then we were out in town and he was there, and he's like, Glaz, come to this club we're going to around the corner. So me and my mates were like, yeah, fair enough. So we went along, and then that was it. That night changed my life, because this club, every week I just went back. I was just, you know, and I got to know all the people there. And then one of the guys that was one of the sort of dance, like they had a couple of guys that used to dress in boiler suits and wear Bart Simpson masks and like dance on the podiums and stuff. Like Tim was one of those. And I was chatting to him in the club, and I'm like, he said, oh, I've not seen you around here much before. And I said, no, I've only been coming a few weeks. I went, don't tell anyone, but 6 weeks or whatever. 6 weeks ago, I was at a Metallica concert. And he's like, oh, I love Metallica. I'm like, okay. He's like, yeah, come back to ours after. So I went back to this after party. And every week, that was it. You'd do Rise on a Friday night and then back to Tim Tom's flat. And there'd be like 50 people in this flat. And everybody could DJ. They couldn't. They were shit. But to me, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. You know, like everyone seemed like they could get up and have a go. But I don't like to not be good at something. You know, I don't want to embarrass myself in front of people. So I just used to sit and watch and just wish I could do it. So I saved up some money, £500, and I got a £500 loan from Yorkshire Bank. I still remember going in and getting the loan, and I bought the Technics 1210s, because I thought, if I'm going to buy, I don't want to buy some shitty belt drive turntables and then a few months later just have to sell them and upgrade anyway. So I just bought the decks, bought the mixer, set it up in my bedroom, and just practiced in secret. You know, I didn't tell anybody. And then anyway, one day at an after party, can I have a go? And I get up there and I just did it, and everyone was like, "What the fuck?" Because
first time, first time,
fluke. Yeah. So yeah, I just started doing it, and that's how it went. Tim Tom was. We all thought Tim Tom was the next big thing. Like, that guy was such a good DJ. Unfortunately for Tim, he kind of struggled with his confidence a little bit, so he used to get hammered to sort of calm himself, right, you know. And then he'd play, but because he was hammered, he didn't play as well as he could, and you know, like which is a shame, because he's a beautiful guy, and you know, but he just didn't get to that next level, you know, like he'd play in Sheffield and maybe a few other, I think he actually went to Canada, he got flown over to Canada and played over there, but he just never got the break that he kind of should have got. But anyway, you know, he's had a fantastic life, and he's more in like the sort of health and wellness space now. But anyway, there was like a point where everyone was sort of switch from saying Tim Tom's the next big thing to it's Glaz. And then I ended up getting a gig A gym that I used to go to with I used to train with all the doormen from the clubs, because when I went to the clubs, I started getting like pally with all the doormen, and then I started training with them. I remember like when I first started training, I was like, I used to box at 73 kilos, so I'm like 100 kilos now. I was boxing at 73 kilos, so I would have been about that weight, because I went from boxing to clubbing, so I didn't put any weight on because you're out every weekend. And I started training with those guys, and then went from 73 kilos to about 110 in like a year.
I had a similar trajectory.
So anyway, we're in this gym in Chesterfield, and the guy that owned the gym, Andy, he was into dance music, and so every time I used to do a new mixtape, I used to do a copy for him. And anyway, I went in the gym one day. He says, "Oh, I've got you a gig." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah." So this girl, Philippa, this aerobics instructor that comes in, I had your tape playing. So this is how long ago it was, tapes, even before we had CDs. I had your tape playing, and she asked if she could have a copy. She's gone out this weekend, played it at some after party. There's a promoter there. He wants you to play at his next gig in Birmingham. I'm like, fuck, So anyway, I ended up getting this gig, and she, sorted it all out. Went and played in Birmingham, and then played for that guy again in Birmingham. And then while all that was happening, there was a guy, Tom, who he was involved in a club called Insomniacs. It just started in the September. So they've just had their 25th birthday a couple of months ago. I used to give Tom, I think I'd sort of moved over. This is when we was just moving over to CDs. So I was giving him a new tape or a new CD every week. But his business partners were, the club used to be across the road from Gatecrasher. So Gatecrasher used to open at 10, finish at 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning. Insomniacs used to open at 4 a.m. on a Sunday morning. So there was like a 2-hour crossover. And as people used to come out of Gatecrasher, they used to go across into Insomniacs. And Tom's two business partners, they wanted Insomniacs to essentially just be an extension of Gatecrasher. So they wanted more trance, and but Tom wanted it to be a harder sound. But they kept blocking. They wouldn't let me play. So, and I was kind of getting to the point where I'm like, is this ever going to work? I need to just, focus and do something a bit more serious, because, I don't want to be one of these people.
Heaven forbid you follow your dreams.
Exactly. So it was over Christmas time. I was kind of getting ready for, sort of moving on to other things. Early in the new year, he called me and said, "I'm in charge of the club now. I've got rid of the other two. It's just me. I want you on last Sunday in January. You're going to get the last set." So for me, it was perfect, because I've always played the harder end of everything. So for me to go on as like usually when you're an up-and-coming DJ, you get put on earlier because you've got to earn the right to be more, main, like a main slot. But then that means if you're someone like me, you've got to kind of tone down, which if I ever get earlier sets, I'm always respectful of whoever's playing afterwards, because, the whole night should progress. If you've got someone comes and bashes it out at the beginning, it just ruins the whole flow. But so he said, last set, 10 a.m. till midday, Sunday. So I'm like, okay, sweet. So anyway, I get to the club. So it was the last the last Sunday in January 2000. Okay. And so I get in there. The club's got, this is 1,000 people in there. And I come on, and by 10:10, half the people had left. But the point is, the other half were going crazy.
They were in.
So we went to the pub afterwards, and Tom's like, "I want you back every week. Last set, it's your slot. Resident, let's go." I'm like, okay. So I've gone from someone who's done a few gigs for some mates in Sheffield clubs.
So you're getting paid for this?
He paid me £50, like $100.
Yeah, okay,
yeah.
Yep.
So anyway, by the end of February, he starts paying me £100. I didn't have to.
Yeah.
But he starts paying me £100. But the other thing that he did, which is, in hindsight, amazing, he'd call me up. He's like, "Oh, you've got a gig. You're going to be playing Lincoln in at the end of the month. It's a Wednesday night, student night. You're getting £500.
Oh, so he's sort of acting a bit like an agent.
Like an agent, because what was happening is people were contacting him saying they kind of thought they had to go to Tom to get me. But he didn't take a cut. He just said, "I've got you this gig."
What a legend.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And I was with him in September, like when I flew back to do the 25th birthday, and I'm like, mate, I need to thank you because I don't think I ever really have, you know, like, because obviously, you know, the club was taking off and getting massive, and I was, and you kind of just go along with. It's only as you get older and you look back and you're like, fuck, like, he didn't need to do any of that.
Yeah.
He could have just kept, no, he's my DJ, you know. So everyone would.
No, but as a kid, effectively, you don't care about that stuff. It's not until you have lived and fought and got to where you are that you look back and go, that's out of the ordinary.
Yeah,
and that's you don't respect it at the time because you don't know you should respect it.
Well, that's right. Yeah.
But now that you've lived, you've got your own job, you've got your own kids, you've lived life. You go, God, that doesn't happen every day.
No.
Yeah.
No. So it was amazing for me. And then what happened is so Insomniacs is going through the roof, and I'm sort of going along.
You're going with it.
With it. Because so what happened is he used to have still, a few weeks later, as I came on, there were still people that would just walk out. But what happened is because the club was full, so they couldn't let anyone else in. So at kind of 9:30, he started getting a queue of people waiting to go. So that then when people left, it was a one out, one in. So then he'd have people coming in and paying probably not full price, but maybe £5 a head. But if you got another 100 people in, he's paying me £100. He's picking up 500 because all these people are coming in, and then instead of half the club going crazy, you've now got a full club that's going. It
it's
was
a good
just
business model.
Yeah. So it was just such a strange sort of period. And then by the end of that year, by the October, I'd done my first international gig. I went and played in Canada for these Vietnamese kids in Vancouver. So then I'm an international DJ, like in my first year. And then in the December, because I started producing. So when I go back to saying about the sort of marketing mind. So when I used to do my tapes and CDs, I didn't just do a tape and just write, Glazby, August 2000 or 99 or whatever on it. I'd do like a cover and get them, I'd go to the equivalent of Office Works, and get them printed and cut them, and package them up so that when people were playing that tape, if they went to an after party, so exactly what happened when I got the Birmingham gig, they could see it's me. I even did. I don't think I've ever told you this before. Obviously, with our film thing, I did one of the CDs that I did was Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Turntables, and that was so. I did all these. Like my thought was, when someone comes up, have you got a tape or have you got a CD? And I gave them that, and then they go back and they go to an after party. It's got 20, 30 people there that might not have been at that club. So that's how I was kind of getting my name out like that. But then I started thinking, right, I'm doing Insomniacs and I'm doing these other gigs, but if I do the best set that anyone's ever played, which is debatable, but and there's 1,000 people there's only 1,000 people, and because of the drugs everyone was doing, there's probably 300 that can remember it. You know? But if I start making music, that can really get me, next level. So I started making some tracks, and the first couple of tracks I did, it was an A and a B side, and I sent it out to all the big labels, and everybody came back and said, yeah, it's good, but not for us. It's not our sound. It's not this. So once I've been knocked back from 10, 15 labels, I said, fuck it, I'll just start my own label. So there was a guy who one of the gigs that I'd done, the midweek gigs that Tom had hooked me up with, a guy called Les. He was older. I would have been 23 at the time. Les was late 30s, and he just wanted to be involved in the scene. He just wanted to be. So he offered to sort of bankroll setting up a label. So we did that. And then he got to say, I'm Les from Vicious Circle. Everyone knew him as Les VC. That was his. So he loved it. And he got to come in the DJ box when I was playing. But really nice guy. And so we set up Vicious Circle, and then it ended up being the biggest. Sorry, not the biggest. The third. But you got Tidy Tracks, Nucleus, and then Vicious Circle would have been like the biggest. Now, Tidy Tracks and Nucleus had more of, especially Tidy Tracks, had more of a commercial sound, so they were always going to be bigger. Yeah. But both of those companies were owned by much bigger music companies, whereas we were just running out of
Independent.
the back bedroom at my house with my wife at the time. So we're all those labels that said, no, it's not for us, no.
So how old are you when you start producing?
It would have been 2000. I would have been 23.
Crazy.
So, but I don't even know how many tracks I've done. It'd have to be well over 100, including remixes, maybe 150, 200, something like that. But I've always gone in with engineers. So I go in with the idea and I'll sort of, say, I want it to sound like this and I need this sound and you use this sample and this and that. But to this day, and even when I went back to the UK in September and I did a track, so Vicious Circle, my label that's still running, I did the very first release, and Vicious Circle 400, which will be probably February, March 2025, I think. Yeah. I've just done that track as well. So I went in the studio and I took my daughter in, Eden, she did the vocal on it. There's a story around that as well. But I said to Maddox, I said, isn't it amazing that after all these years and after all these tracks, I still don't have a fucking clue what you're doing there. Like, there's some guys that they can kind of tinker around and, they can't do all the real nuance of a track, but they can kind of put beats to it. I don't even know how to turn it on. Yeah. Because I've just, like a lot of the time I'll have my back to it because I like to listen to it without looking at the screen so you can get like if you're looking at the screen, you can see when things are coming in. Yes. You can prepare yourself, whereas I like to turn my back and just listen to what's happening so I get a feel for what like someone on the dance floor would get. Yeah. So I started at 23 and everyone sort of knocked it back and said, no, it's not for me. I even remember as well when we put Vicious Circle 1 out, there's a friend, he's a friend of mine now, but I didn't really know him at the time, but he was one of the DJs that I really looked up to, Andy Farley. Amazing guy, probably one of my best mates that, because some DJs you sort of know and you're friendly with, but it's a very transient sort of thing. I'm stepping into the DJ box while they're stepping out because they're heading off to another gig. Yeah. So I think the fans kind of think that we're all this like close-knit community, but we don't know each other all that well. But Farley, certainly, Andy Farley, Paul Maddox, Ben Stevens, they're like, friends. Yeah. But Andy Farley was reviewing, there was a Scottish dance magazine called M8. So M8 is the motorway that goes into thing. So the magazine was called M8, and he was doing the reviews. And the reviews, because it was M8, instead of being marks out of 10 or marks out of 5, it was marks out of 8. Yes. And he would never, even the shittiest track he would review he was too kind. He used to give things like a 6, even if they were shit. And he reviewed Vicious Circle 1 and gave it a 5.5. I still remember it. I could have fucking killed him.
It must have been real bad.
It's a classic. It is a So the Tidy Weekender, like if that's not the last track. So I did the closing set for the very first Tidy Weekender, and people always say about how it was the last track. It wasn't the last track that I played. I actually played another encore and played another track, but no one remembers that. Kick It was the track that everyone remembers. And even when I get royalty statements now, like from Vicious Circle, it'll be Kick It and Hostile. They're the things that that I make more off. The fucking track's 24 years old. Wow. But people still download that more. So it's a classic. Yeah. It's not just me saying it. It really is a hard house.
Well, it's time tested.
Yeah. Yeah. But for some reason, Farley felt like he had to give it a 5.5. So if you're watching this, Andrew, I'll never forget that.
Wanker.
Love you, really.
So then look, paraphrasing, because I'm sure we'll touch on it. I don't want to cut you short, but we've got forever to talk about this, but we also don't. But you got out of the DJ world.
Yeah, so basically, I, through being a combination of being a DJ and a lazy twat,
yeah,
I ended up, I went from, I'd been training with these guys, got to like 110 kilos, but then all of a sudden just stopped training. I don't even know what, we broke up for Christmas and I just never went back. And that kind of coincided with the DJing taking off. And then with the DJing, you're sitting in the studio all day, you're sitting in cars. Because like in England, you will drive for, sometimes I might have an 8-hour drive to get to a gig. And I'd play for an hour.
Jeez.
and then drive back. You know, like it was just a lot of sitting in the car. But my eating habits.
It's a lot of fast food, mate.
Eating from petrol stations all the time. But the thing is, I'm a glutton. You know, like so I would get like a meat pie and a sandwich and a bag of chips. But let's get the family pack. And you know, like I'd walk out of the petrol station with a carrier bag of and then just eat it in the car. So I went from 110 kilos up to 115, but because I wasn't training, you know, whereas at 110 I was pretty solid, but then I went 115 and not really that solid. But because I'd been big and I sort of just stayed big, like in my I didn't look like I was like, well, I probably did look like I was overweight, but if I'd just gone from being skinny to being fat, then it would have been more noticeable. That's what I'm trying to say. So anyway, at 25, I stumbled. I was talking to my friend Ben. I was on my way to a gig in Amsterdam, Dance Valley. That's the biggest crowd I've ever played. 25,000 people.
Wow.
And on the way to the gig, that was the year before though. So the next year I played it again. I can't remember how big the crowd was that time, but on the way to the gig, I'm stood and there was a W.H. Smith's, which is like a newsagent's thing. And there was a book that had just been released called You Are What You Eat. So Gillian McKeith was the woman, and it was just like a vegan diet basically, which I didn't realize at the time. But I saw the book. I'm on the phone to Ben. I see the book because it was a new release. I was like got the stand with them all on. Walked across, flicked through it, and there's all these pictures of like fruits and vegetables. It literally looked really nice. It's not like I was adverse to that stuff. I just didn't eat it. You know, I would literally, and not as a special occasion, as a Wednesday night, just a normal Wednesday night, I'd order a large pepperoni pizza with extra cheese, a large garlic bread with extra cheese, a tub of ice cream, and a 2 litre bottle of Coke or Sprite or something like that. And that would just be my dinner. Like, not even a special occasion. I'd just eat that to myself, you know, like, or I'd go to the Chinese and I'd have 2 plates. My mate, John Housley, we got the Chinese. He's like, who else is coming? I went, no, this is mine. You know, that's just how I would eat. Like, so anyway, I read this book, read half of it on the way to Amsterdam. I remember I got to Amsterdam. They invited us out for dinner before the gig. I said, no, I'm staying in the hotel. I just kept reading this book. Finished reading it, and I remember being in Amsterdam and messaging my girlfriend saying, everything's changing when I get back tomorrow. Read as I got back to Manchester airport, I'd finished the book, and the next day we just cleared all the fridge, the cupboards, everything out, went to the supermarket, bought all this new stuff, just changed my diet overnight. And that was the first weekend in August, and by Christmas I'd lost 32 kilos. So in about 16 weeks, something like that. I also grew my hair at the same time. So the beginning part of that next year, I'm playing gigs and people are coming up to Kate going, who's this DJ? She's like, it's Paul Glazby. Like, no, that's not Paul Glazby. And she's like, I can assure you it is. But I just looked completely different. But when you've been bigger and then you lose weight, it's a weird thing. You know, just little things like people like, you know, whereas someone might have held a door for you before, now they just let it slam in your face and things like that. So I'm like, I'm not really into this. And because I wasn't exercising at all, I just changed my diet. So I'd gone from like even though I'd lost a lot, I wasn't happy in myself. And I remember we went to the Dominican Republic. So I used to do all my New Year's Eve gigs, finish the gigs usually around the 2nd of January. And then on the 3rd or 4th, just head off overseas for 2 weeks as a holiday, because there's no gigs in January anyway, because obviously everyone's skint after Christmas. So went to the Dominican Republic, and I just remember being really self-conscious, because I was like skinny fat. I was like just like a little, you know, I looked like I got cancer basically. I was like, it was not good. And I'd bought a Men's Health and a Men's Fitness magazine on the way there. And I remember just reading, literally, even though all the adverts, I'd kind of run out of things to read. I was just reading everything. Got back, joined the gym, started having personal training sessions with this guy who was absolute. You know, you meet people along the way that kind of teach you how not to do things.
I think that's more important than the people that teach you how to do things.
Yeah. Like Tom, for example. Like, you know, he taught me how to treat me. I didn't really pick up on it like I should have. But the ones that do the wrong stuff, you're like,
You remember them?
I remember them, yeah. And you know it right at the time as well.
Yeah.
So I had a few personal training sessions and just started training. And basically that was in the January. The following January, I started my personal training diploma, because what happened is throughout that year, I was getting so immersed in training and stuff. All my friends who'd been training all the time I'd been overweight were coming to me and saying, "Oh, can you help me with this? Can you write me a program?" And I'm like, and then Kate, she's like, "You should just do this. Like, you'd be really good at it." So I started my personal, and at that point, what had happened with the DJing is that the management company I was with had been sold to a big agency in London, which at the time we thought was going to be amazing, but was a massive disaster because the guy that owned it, he was trying to keep us, he was doing the opposite of what Tom did. He was trying to keep us like all closed off for his gigs. So if someone wanted to see the top hard house DJs in the country, they had to come to his gigs. But not only that, he was filling the diary with fake gigs. So we'd get, like, "Oh, you got this gig coming up," and then on the third, "Oh, they've cancelled it." Yeah. So my earnings went from, like, literally, I lost 3/4 of my income, like, from 1 year to the next.
Wow.
So I'm thinking, okay, well, this DJing's done. I've had a good run. It's been, 3 or 4 years. I've travelled around the world. Time to move on to something else. Do my personal training diploma. Started that in the January, finished it in April. As I finished a few weeks after I'd finished doing that, Andy Farley, that we were talking about earlier, he used to come up to my place and we'd go to the gym and I'd show him I'd write him a program, show him the exercises, and then he'd go back, because he lived in a different town. So he'd go back and train for, a month or 6 weeks, and then come back and I'd do another program for him. But after we'd trained, he used to come back to my place, we'd have lunch, and then he'd go. And we were bitching and moaning because he was on the same agency as me, because they'd been messing him around as well. And anyway, I said, so Kate, she was managing my record label at the time. And I'm like, it's not fucking rocket science. Like, if they want to really make money, we've got to make money if they're going to make money. I said, you could do a better job. Literally the next day, Kate and a friend had set up Red Management. I said to Most Wanted, I'm gone. And within less than 2 weeks, all the top hard house talent had left Most Wanted and come to Red Management. So Kate started off with this management company. She's got all the best DJs. But what happened is, I started getting personal training clients, but my DJing went from and took off again.
Yeah, right.
So then I had 7 years where I would be up at 5:30 on a Monday. I'd do 25 to 35 personal training sessions throughout the week, but then DJ Friday, DJ Saturday, sometimes DJ Sunday, 5:30 Monday, up again, and I did that for 7 years.
From what it seems is that do you have an addictive personality? Because you seem like everything is like 150% in. Have you found that might be the case?
Well, if someone asked me the question, I'd say no. I'm not. But I think maybe, yeah.
Now that I'm listening to myself,
yeah.
I think it's so you're doing 25. You're effectively probably working 100 hours a week for 7 years. That's not sustainable.
No,
for anyone.
No.
So then, how do you change that?
Well, so during that time, me and Kate had split up, and then I'd met Kelly, and we were together. And then we found out Kelly was pregnant with Nevaeh, my eldest, who's 12 now. So at that point, I'm like, right. Oh, and by then as well, I'd opened my first gym as well. So then I've got the personal training clients, I've got a gym. And I'm still DJing. So I said that something's got to give. And the way I saw it, my future was the gyms. I'd kind of done everything that I wanted to do with the DJing. I'd played everywhere, and I was coming to Australia doing tours at least once a year, but usually every 6 months. And I'd kind of done all that. I'd released the albums. I'd done, like so much more than I ever thought I was ever going to do.
What started as a hobby?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. My dad going, turn that shit down, and then
typical dads.
Yeah. So anyway, but the one thing. So I announced my retirement. I said, look, I'm gonna retire from UK gigs. So I still wanted to be able to do internationals, because if someone said, do you want to come to Australia for, I'm like,
of course.
Yeah. So I said, I'm retiring from UK gigs. I'm going to do one more gig. And then Jimmy Dean, is it? Anyway, the guy, he was the promoter for Storm, who I'd been a resident for a long time, one of the big sort of hard house gigs in the country. And he said, because Insomniacs had stopped by this stage, so they weren't around anymore. They've kind of come back again more recently.
Yep.
And Jimmy said, I want to do your big, your sort of farewell gig. So, we need to work out who's going to warm up, who's going to be on after you. Do you want to do a 3-hour set because it's something special? And I said, mate, I want to do a 10-hour set. He's like, what the fuck? I said, look, I've done 2 8-hour sets. And I always said, like when I did my first 8-hour set, I finished it and I'm like, I want to do 10. Straight, literally, as I put the headphones on, I'm going to do 10. No one had ever done 10 hours before. I think a couple of people have done it since. I'm sure some people in the bedroom have done 10. I know I've done 10-hour sets in my bedroom. But in a club, obviously, you've got to try and coordinate. You've got to be open long enough to be able to do it. So he's like, okay, let's do that. So the club would normally open at 10, but we opened at 8 and finished at 6. And yeah, so I did the first, which, like I said, at the time would have been, an unofficial Guinness World Record. Yeah. But also what I did, because I'd got all my vinyls that I just had cluttering up the house, for years, and I'm not going to do anything with these. Could I sell them? Probably, but it's just I couldn't be arsed with it. So I took all my vinyl, and at the end of the 10 hours, we gave everything away to all the fans. And I'd kept, there's some real special ones I kept. Neil, this guy a mate of mine that used to come to all my gigs, American guy who's like 20 years older than me, but he was just mad into hard house. Yeah. And I turned around and he's fucking giving, I'm like,
put them away.
They're worth like £100 each. Like, what the fuck? So anyway, but that was a good night. And if you Google Paul Glazby, that's one of the main videos that comes up from that thing. It was that was good to do. But yeah, I remember getting 5 hours into, because when I did my 8-hour sets, that's when I would have been playing 4 or 5 times in a weekend then. But by the time I did my 10-hour set, I was probably playing once a week or sometimes once a fortnight. I was like that sort of, I wasn't sort of DJ fit anymore. Like I wasn't used to. I remember getting to halfway through the 5 hour, because what I did, I never plan a set, I've never have. But what I did for that, because it was such a long set, just to sort of rein myself in so I didn't get too carried away too quickly, I did everything on vinyl as well. I had a 8 till 10 bag and a 10 till 12. And I stopped myself going to that next bag until it got to the time. And then, but when it got to the time, I had to move that bag and go to the next one. So I kind of just progressed myself through. So I'd kind of, but I didn't know what I was going to play. The bag might have 100 records in it, and in an hour you might play, I don't know, 8 or 10 or whatever. So out of 100 records, I might play 20 in that bag. So I still didn't know what I was going to play. I was doing it how I normally do, just by feel, but I just sort of did it to rein myself in a little bit, so I didn't end up thumping it out, and then going, oh shit, it's only 1 a.m. I've got another 5 hours to go. Yeah. So I did that. Gave everything away, but that was nice that night, because it was the first time my dad had ever seen me play. He'd never been to a gig. Like, why would he? Yeah. But he came to that, and it was nice because everybody that was there for me. I was the only DJ.
Was he there for the 10 hours?
No. I think he went home. I think
10 minutes?
He got there. He would have got there at 8, and I think he left about 10:30.
Yeah.
But, he only stayed that long because he had some blonde hanging off him. Oh, you were Paul Glazby's dad. And she's like, he thought he was in. So, and there's a point in that mix as well, because they released it as 5 2-hour mixes. And so I know I lasted 8 hours and 34 minutes before I had to run and have a piss. Can you imagine being at work all day and just not in the bathroom? 8 hours and 34 minutes, and I was absolutely busting. It was ridiculous. But I had to climb out of the DJ box and essentially like run down to reception and then up some other stairs on the other side of the building. And I remember peeing and I could hear the music, and I'm like, shit, I don't think I'm going to get back in time. I literally just managed to get in and get the next track in. But yeah, but then. Yeah, that night, my hearing's never been the same since that night. That was pretty full on. I just couldn't hear anything for days. Yeah, but yeah, so that's how I sort of transitioned from, that was like really like the end of, sort of regular gigs. Interestingly though, 18 months later I went back and did a 3-hour set at that same club because by popular demand. Some people were on the message boards, Glazby wasn't supposed to play again.
Oh, you're John Farnham.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
It's the farewell tour.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah. The annual farewell tour.
Yeah.
But, people on message boards going, you shouldn't be playing again. So you don't have to come.
No. I'm sure they were there, though. Probably. Yeah. Pay your money and shut up.
Yeah. So that was the sort of transition, and then I was just focusing on the gyms. But my problem has always been, until I got into real estate, because I'm just doing like the one thing now, and it's sort of working pretty well. I've always, I think it's a Russian proverb: chase 2 rabbits, catch none, and that's been the story of my life. I had the DJing and the record, which went hand in hand. I mean, really, they worked together, but I was still, focused on 2 things, and then I started doing the fitness. So I'd got the gyms or the personal training and the DJing. And then when I set up the gyms and I retired from the DJ and I wasn't doing the production anymore because I didn't need to do the productions, because like the production kind of feeds your DJing, like that, so keeps your name relevant. And but then I set up a fitness music business, which could have been $1 million, multi-million-dollar business had I have just focused on it. But I was doing that and I was doing the gyms, and like kind of both suffered. So that was a hard lesson. And until I got to 40 years old, I didn't. When you're younger, you think you can, take on the world, don't you?
Well, you do. So you've DJ, gyms, real estate. I don't see the progression. I can almost see the DJ to fitness progression. I don't see the progression. Why real estate?
There is no progression. No. So basically what happened is the gyms, everyone said to me, if you leave, when Nevaeh was born, we moved to New Zealand.
Yep.
And then from New Zealand, while we're in New Zealand, we had Eden. And then when Eden was 3 months old, we moved to Australia.
Yep.
So
good move.
Yeah. But the girl's mum, she wanted to be near her sister. Her sister lived on the Gold Coast, so we moved here. And that's how we ended up. But and then I was running the gyms while I was in New Zealand, and the first few years of being in Australia, I was still running the gyms. I used to fly back. So I'd fly back to England and do like 3-4 weeks in England, and then I'd come back here and have 3 or 4 months here, and then I'd go back again. And so just backwards and forwards. And sometimes it might, tie in with a gig or something, which was good because then it covered the flights and all that. But so the gyms were going great. And in England, we have a VAT, which is like GST, but it's 20% instead of 10%. But you basically do a quarterly VAT return.
Yep.
So you get like a little bit of a sort of temperature gauge as to where your business is running. And for years, because all the people said, if you leave the country, your business is going to go to shit. And I'm like, I think I can make it work. And for 4.5 years, the accountant, every quarter was like, best quarter ever, best quarter. He was just building and building and building. It was going great. And I used to do all the online marketing. So I'd sit in a cafe in somewhere on the Gold Coast and do the Facebook adverts and create a landing page and drive people to that. And, and then the guys in Sheffield would have all the new leads that would be coming through and doing a 30-day challenge or whatever. And I'd do videos for all the membership groups. I'd be, so I used to put the car, in the car, I used to put the phone on the rear view mirror. I used to use the girls' hair ties and put the video, the camera on. And then I'd just talk, about, it could be anything, fitness, health, motivation, and then we'd post them in the membership groups and stuff. And when I'd go back and I'd run a session in the gym, oh, you're the car video guy. That's what people used to like know me as, because I used to just churn them out all the time. So, but then I met someone. So me and the girl's mum, we split up, and 18 months later, I met someone who as I started seeing this woman, she just started a 3-month-long service leave. So, you meet someone new, I just went into like holiday mode with her. Unbeknownst to me, my manager, she was beautiful, Annalise, her and her husband, Scott. I'd known Scott since we were kids. and she was fantastic. But she'd been nursing her grandma she'd been a primary caregiver for about 2 or 3 years, and she passed away. So instead of dealing with it, she kind of just kept working, and but because she didn't deal with it, things started slipping, and we'd lose a few members here, a few members there. But I didn't know, because I took my eye off the ball, because I'm in this new relationship and I'm just like obsessed with that. So anyway, at the end of the 3 months, she goes back to work, and I'm like, okay, I better get back into work mode now. And I just remember there was one day I said to Annalise, we need to pay something. And she's like, we can't. We don't have enough money. I'm like, what? She's like, we don't have enough money. I'm like, how can we not have enough money? Like, we had 450 members. Like, we've lost a few. Now, she wasn't being malicious. She was just sort of, she thought she could pull things around before I found out. So, she was trying to protect me, really. I'm like, look, we need to know exactly where we stand. And when she drilled down into it, we'd gone from 450 down to like 250, which, that 200 members that we lost, that was
that's the profit.
Yeah. So we were screwed. And then that kind of realization as to exactly where things were at sent her into a full nervous breakdown. And Scott rang me. He's like, mate, she's got to take some time off. And a couple of days later, he's like, she's not coming back. I'm like, fuck. And I felt bad for her, like that more than anything. But I'm like, my only option is to go back to England for at least 6 months and try and steer the ship and pull it round. My sister was working for me. I had this guy, Danny, that was the head trainer, who was a great guy. But I'm in this new relationship. My kids are here. I don't want to be away from my kids for 6 months, So I'm like, I think I'm over this. So anyway, Danny, he offered to buy me out of the gyms. For the dream was to build it up into like not a franchise, but like having multiple sites, and it'd be worth millions. Yeah. But anyway, he bought me out, and he sort of he gave me a bit of a bridge to just find something else to do. Anyway, Michael, who I'm in business with now, his wife was the sister of the woman I was seeing. So that's how I knew that. I met them through her. Yep. So we'd been sort of knocking around for 6 months, and they'd moved up from Melbourne and set up black and white estate agents. And he kept saying to me, you'd be really good at real estate. You should give it a crack. I'm like, I don't give a fuck about real estate. Because my thoughts about real estate were that if you were a real estate agent, if you were just driving down the road and you went, how much is that worth? And you just have to, go, that one's worth.
It's 2.6.
Yeah. But it's not like that at all, So anyway, through hanging around with them, I kind of realised that real estate was more about people than houses. And I'm like, well, I know people. Like when you're trying to keep 450 members happy in a gym, when you're getting them to pay a premium to do shit they don't want to do, and you're telling them not to do the stuff they do want to do, that's hard. Yeah. So if you can do that, you can keep people happy in a real estate transaction. So, and then because I'd sold out the gyms, I'm like, okay, I'm 40 years old. I've got this, like $40,000 or whatever to sort of get by on. That's not going to last long. I bought some suits, did the real estate course, started real estate, and turned out Michael was right.
So your real estate career, you started with Michael?
To be honest, mate, if I wasn't doing it with Michael, I wouldn't be doing real estate. Right. It's like, being around with those guys. I've had all of them, Ray White, Harcourts, LJ Hooker, all of them. You can come, we'll give you a bonus and this and that. I'm like, no thanks. It's it just wouldn't work. Yeah, for me.
So is it so real estate then? Is it the people? So is that the driving force behind it?
The people that I work with, on a day-to-day basis is like one of the main things, and then the people that because the thing is with real estate, I can't think that in nearly 7 years, I don't even know how many sales, but literally hundreds of clients. I can probably count on one hand the ones that I would never want to speak to again. There's not many people that are. Sometimes there might be situations because it's a high stress period in people's lives. Yeah. So you've got to be able to work with that, and oftentimes by the time it's all said and done, there can be moments where people are a little bit like on edge and shitty because there was an offer coming in but then it didn't, or the offer came in, it was nowhere near what they were expecting, and you've just got to be able to deal with that. But once people are sold and done, everything's fine. There's a handful of people that don't fall into that category, but you kind of get to choose who you want to work with as well. It's like if I walk into someone's place and or if you speak to them on the phone and they come across as a bit of a tool, I don't have to call them back. Yeah, I can choose not to work with them. So it's.
Is it what you want to be doing?
So, like anything, there's days where everything seems to be going wrong, but in general, you're sort of master of your own destiny, really. And like I said, you can choose who you work with. You're kind of in control of where a lot of the sort of process is. I mean, you have to be. That's what you're there for, to be in control of it. So, I don't think it's something I would want to do. I don't want to be 60 years old and still, doing the grind. Yeah. But there's ways that we're setting the business up now that it won't have to be, I think I've got a few. I'd like to think, another 5 years of going hard at it and then really
take a breath.
Yeah, well, just work with the client, because by then, in another 5 years, that'll be almost double what I've been doing now. I'll have literally hundreds of clients I've worked with, and then just work with those people. Yeah. Like if they've got friends and family that they just refer me in because they know that they can trust me and that I'll do a good job. And just keep in contact with those people and just, and then obviously there's the rent roll side of things where, that you can build that to a level where you're making a decent income. I don't care about, when I was in my 20s and my 30s, the aspiration was to, like be a millionaire. Mm. But what for? Yeah. It's not something that if you can be a millionaire in other ways, like
I think if your life goal is monetary, you're going to be miserable. Yeah, because there's just too much pressure on that. Yeah. So, money's fine, and money makes it easier. But
if you get $1 million, then let's get 10 million.
And and this is it. Like I watch, we obviously watch a lot of movies. We love movies, but I drug dealers and those guys, like if I did one $12 million deal, I'm done. Yeah. I'm out. Yeah. I don't need any more. But you go find these guys that, Ozark, the TV show, you got millions and tens of millions and hundreds of millions of dollars in the walls. Yeah. Why?
Yeah. Or Breaking Bad.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. Why? Like, just one deal. That's all I need. Yeah. It's crazy.
It's but that's what drives. I look at people. I'm just thinking of this now because we're talking about it. But like Elon Musk, he doesn't seem to me like he's driven by money. Like he's trying to make a difference. He's trying to do but he just, luckily for him, the things he's doing are obviously have now positioned him as the richest man in the world. Yeah. I think if you can, as a real estate agent, if you can positively impact enough people, you're gonna be okay. You're gonna be doing all right. Yeah, yeah. That's really the. And real estate for me is, when I got into it, my girls, so I've been doing it now for coming on 7 years. So my girls were 5 and 3 when I started. And I remember being at a party. One of the girls went to like a birthday party on a Saturday morning, like the play pen or whatever they call it, the, you know what I mean, with the slides and all that shit, the ball pit. And I'm talking to this guy who must have been one of the granddads, I think, because I remember him being older. And he's like, "Oh, what do you do?" And I said, "I'm in real estate." And he's like, "Oh, my mate was a real estate agent. Ruined his life. Wife won't talk to him. Kids won't talk to him. His wife left him." And I looked at him and I went, "Mate, it's not real estate." I said, "Your mate's a dickhead." Yeah. I said, "It's been the opposite for me." Yeah. I said, I've been able to take my girls to school and pick them up and go, I can, if Daddy, I've got a performance at school. When is it? Thursday at 2. Great. I just block it out of my calendar. I don't have to be. Now, it's not always like that. And that's why when I say about Michael and me not doing real estate unless I'm with them, because in the early days, I might have a listing appointment at 7 o'clock at night. Mm. But I'd pick the girls up from school. I'd take them. Tess would make the dinner. She'd shower them, put them in the pajamas. I'd get back from the listing appointment at 8:30, have a quick drink with them. They'd probably got my dinner ready. I would have eaten that, put the girls in the car, drive them home, put them in bed. You know, like, it's, yeah. If I worked anywhere, I mean, not that I need that now because they're older, but, you know, like, it's, yeah.
But it's more than just a job, like that kind of thing. Like I think it's funny. Like I've worked at lots of places, and I used to have the joke where you talk about culture and you talk about we're a family, we're like family, and I used to laugh and go, yeah, it's Fast and Furious $10 an hour, right? Yeah. But occasionally you find places that it's more than. And you've obviously found this with Michael. You're now business partners and you've worked together for 7 years, and it's all that stuff that you've done together to get to where you are today. It becomes more than Fast and Furious $10 an hour. And so that's special. And
well, I mean, you know, we've had people that have been in our office, you know, say, oh, you know, we're family, and then they fuck off to another agency, and you just think you're full of shit. You know?
This is it.
And then you see them on Instagram, you know, having drinks with other people that they used to talk shit about.
That they're family with now. Yeah. Exactly. And I think, and this is why I used to laugh about, you know, Fast and Furious $10 an hour, because 99% of the time, it's bullshit. Yeah. It's, you know, they're just here for the paycheck. Yeah. And that's cool too. And I got no dramas with that. But don't sell me the dream when it's going to be a nightmare. Yeah. So, mate, the podcast is exciting, and I'm happy to be on the journey with you. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think just in this, you know, little introduction to you has explained a lot as to why you're doing what you're going to do. Yeah,
I think, like I said at the beginning, if anyone watches this and just goes, you know what, I've always wanted to do that, I'm just going to give something a try. Or, you know, like, I just, if you're asleep 8 hours a day, and you're at work at least 8 hours a day, it's like a third of your life. Like if you live to 90, that means you're at work for pretty much 30 years. Mm. Like fucking doing shit that you don't like. Yeah. I don't get. And that's not to say that every day is like a dream for me. It's not. But in general, and I've kind of sort of unwittingly gone from, you know, when the DJ, and it kind of run its course a little bit. Mm. And then obviously the gyms, they got to the point where, you know, when things went shit with it, even though we'd been doing so well up until just a few weeks before that. But then when it went, I'm like, I'm over it. I don't need it. Like, whereas a few years before, I'd been right on a plane there, I would have got it. Or I wouldn't have even took my eye off the ball for 3 months, no matter who I met. You know, like it. So I guess, you know, there's things happen for a reason. For a reason, that's right. Yeah. And you know what you said there. That normally I wouldn't do that, but obviously, you know, you were innately you were saying to yourself, "Well, I'm done." You hadn't realised yet. Yeah. I think sometimes we need the push, or sometimes we need it to be taken out of our own hands, because I say this a lot, especially with people that I work with, is that just make any decision, because I think sometimes not making a decision is the worst decision. Yeah. So you might as well do something rather than doing nothing. And I think when you start doing nothing, you're already quietly quitting on it. Yeah. Like, just make a call. Yeah. Paul, the journey started. It's a pleasure to be with you with it. Cheers, mate. And this will be every week. Along. Yeah, mate, this will be every week. We're going to be interviewing some of your not only friends but associates and just people you know, and talking about their story. You're going to be talking monthly with Blackie, Michael, about real estate as well, and we'll get some guests on that are going to discuss about that aspect of your life. It's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. Well done, mate. Cheers, Paul.
This is When I Grow Up with Paul Glazby.